Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be tackling entrepreneurship, specifically the rise of online marketplaces and all those new business models that keep popping up. We're going to be looking at excerpts from HBR's 10 must-reads on entrepreneurship, and also a really fascinating Harvard Business Review article on online marketplaces. So whether you're thinking about starting your own business, or you just want to understand how the economy is changing and what's driving that, this deep dive is for you.
Yeah, it really is an exciting time to be an entrepreneur. And we're going to be exploring a bunch of paths to success, some traditional, some not so much. And by the end, you'll be equipped to ask the right questions about all the opportunities and challenges out there.
Okay, so let's just jump right in. First up, let's talk venture capital. We hear so much about VCs these days. There's almost a mythical status around them. But there's this HBR article called Six Myths About Venture Capitalists. And it kind of challenges that whole image. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's a really interesting article because it presents a lot of data that might actually surprise people. Like, for example, did you know over the past decade, VC funds have actually underperformed the stock market? And most of them haven't even beat the returns you'd get from just investing in a small cap public index, which is basically a collection of smaller companies that are publicly traded.
So all those stories about VCs taking huge risks and then getting these massive payouts, that might not be the whole picture.
Right, exactly. And another thing the article points out is that VCs typically only invest about 1% of their own money in the funds they manage. So while they're definitely involved in taking risks, they're not putting their own capital on the line to the extent that most people think.
Okay, so that really changes things. What would you say to someone out there who is thinking about seeking VC funding?
I think the most important thing is to go in with a very clear understanding of how VC funding works and what to expect from that relationship. Don't just get caught up in the hype. Really try to get that balanced perspective.
That makes a lot of sense. So if VC funding isn't the only option, what are some other ways entrepreneurs can get their ventures going? Get off the ground.
Well, in HBR's 10 must-reads on entrepreneurship, there's a really great case study, the story of Chobani Yogurt. And it's just an amazing example of how a company can be incredibly successful through bootstrapping, which basically means growing without relying on outside investment.
Oh, the Chobani story. I've always loved that. What were some of those key decisions that led to their success?
Well, Chobani's founder, Hamdi Ulukaya, he made some really bold choices, and they really paid off. So instead of trying to break into that really competitive specialty shop market, he went straight for mainstream grocery stores. He put Chobani right there on the shelves next to all the big yogurt brands, and that gave them instant visibility and access to way more customers.
That's such a great example of challenging conventional wisdom. Instead of trying to fit into an existing market, he just created his own space.
Exactly. He also had a different approach to slotting fees. You know those payments that manufacturers make to retailers for prime shelf space? Instead of paying a huge amount up front, he negotiated to pay gradually over time as the yogurt sold.
Oh, so that freed up so much more capital for him to reinvest back into the business. It seems like he had a really deep understanding of the market and its costs.
Yeah, he really did. And his pricing strategy was smart too. He wanted Chobani to be seen as a premium product, but he knew he had to be competitive on price. So he found that sweet spot, charging slightly more than traditional American yogurt brands, but less than the European-style yogurts. And that allowed him to build a healthy profit margin and really fuel that rapid growth.
I love the Chobani story. It shows the power of really knowing your target market and being willing to break away from those industry norms. But what about people who maybe prefer a more structured approach when they're starting a new venture?
That's where the lean startup methodology comes in. It's a framework for navigating the uncertainty of starting a business and for adapting to all those changes that are going to happen along the way.
Can you break down some of the core concepts of lean startup for us?
Sure. One of the core principles is that business plans aren't meant to be these static documents. They should evolve as you gather more information about your customers and the market. So the lean startup approach encourages you to think of your business plan as this living document. You're constantly adapting and refining it as you learn more.
That actually takes a lot of pressure off, doesn't it? It's okay to start with a messy plan and just kind of refine it as you go.
Right, exactly. Another important concept is customer development, which is all about getting out there and talking to potential users. Getting that direct feedback from your target audience is super valuable, and it can save you from wasting time and resources building something that nobody wants.
So you're validating your assumptions. You're making sure you're building something that people actually need and want. What's the third core concept of lean startup?
The third concept is agile development, which is about building your product or service in these small, iterative steps. This lets you gather feedback really quickly and adapt based on what you learn. So rather than spending months or even years developing like this perfect product, you get a basic version out there, get that feedback, and then iterate and improve.
Yeah, so if you're someone who feels overwhelmed by the idea of creating this flawless business plan, from day one, Lean Startup is saying it's okay to start small, get feedback, and refine as you go.
Yeah, it's a much more dynamic and responsive way to approach entrepreneurship, especially in today's fast-paced business world.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, we've talked about bootstrapping, we've talked about the Lean Startup approach, but there's another concept that's become really important these days, blitzscaling.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
blitzscaling is fascinating. It's all about achieving rapid growth to dominate a market. And it's a strategic response to the realities of the digital age, where competition can come out of nowhere, from anywhere in the world overnight.
I love this analogy. Reid Hoffman, who's a big name in Silicon Valley and one of the people behind blitzscaling, he describes it as throwing yourself off a cliff and assembling the airplane on the way down.
Yeah, that's a pretty vivid image. It captures the intensity and the risk of blitzscaling. You're making bold decisions, you're moving fast,
Yeah.
and you're constantly adapting.
So how do companies even manage the organizational challenges that come with that kind of growth? I mean, we're talking expanding into new markets, maybe even going global. There's so many complexities.
It requires a different kind of management mindset. Hoffman talks about the shift from relying on strict rules to using heuristics, which are more like guidelines or principles that you can apply to a lot of different situations. So it's about being adaptable and finding solutions that work in a really fast-paced environment.
Can you give us an example of what that might look like in practice?
Sure. So let's say a company is experiencing massive growth and they're suddenly flooded with new customers. And that can easily overwhelm their customer service capabilities. Now, traditional management thinking might say, okay, let's build a big structured customer service department. But that takes time and resources, which a company in like hyper-growth mode might not have. So instead, they might try a more unconventional solution, like partnering with a call center in a different location, or using remote customer service reps.
So finding creative solutions that can be implemented quickly and adapted as the company grows, it almost sounds like controlled chaos.
In a way it is. Blitzscaling is not for the faint of heart. It definitely comes with risks. But for some companies in certain industries, it can be the key to achieving that dominant market position.
And understanding blitzscaling helps us make sense of the moves made by companies like Google or Facebook.
Oh, absolutely. These companies are masters of blitzscaling, and they've used it to achieve that global reach and to stay ahead of the competition.
Okay, so we've taken this journey through some key entrepreneurial concepts, but let's get a bit more specific and focus on a business model that's been super successful in recent years: online marketplaces.
Right. And this is where the HBR article, Network Effects Aren't Enough, comes in.
Yeah.
It really dives into what makes online marketplaces successful, but it also cautions that it's not as simple as it seems.
Yeah, on the surface, online marketplaces do seem like the perfect business model. Low overhead costs, high profit margins, and that network effect, which means that the platform just becomes more valuable as more users join, creating barriers to entry for competitors. What could go wrong?
It sounds ideal, but there are definitely challenges. One of the biggest is building trust and ensuring safety. Simply having a rating system isn't always enough to make users feel secure, especially when you're talking about high-value transactions or sharing personal information.
That's a really good point. It's like this catch-22. You need a lot of users to generate that activity and build trust. But getting those users in the first place requires having some level of trust already. How do marketplaces get over that hurdle?
That's one of the key challenges they face. And then there's also this issue of disintermediation, which is when users basically bypass the platform.
Yeah.
And connect directly. They cut out the middleman.
That sounds like it could really hurt an online marketplace's revenue. What can they do to prevent that?
Well, the article cautions against just punishing users who try to go around the platform. Instead, it suggests finding ways to give users real incentives to stay within the marketplace.
So adding value at every stage of the transaction and making it a more seamless and secure experience for everyone involved. Do you have an example of a company that does this well?
Yeah, Airbnb is a great example. They've implemented features like secure payment processing, host guarantees, and a resolution center to handle disputes. So by creating a more compelling ecosystem within their platform, they give users fewer reasons to go off-platform.
So it's about creating a win-win situation for both the marketplace and its users.
Exactly. And we can't forget about regulation, which can really make or break an online marketplace. The rules are constantly changing, and staying on top of those changes is critical.
Airbnb has been really proactive in working with regulators, right? I remember reading about how they've worked with cities to actually create new laws that address the sharing economy.
Yeah, they have. And that's a fantastic example of how a company can shape the regulatory landscape instead of just reacting to it. Engaging with regulators early on can be really crucial, especially for marketplaces that are operating in industries that are heavily regulated, like finance or transportation.
So online marketplaces, they offer incredible potential, but they come with this unique set of challenges that require careful planning and being adaptable and a deep understanding of all those market forces at play.
Absolutely. It's a very dynamic space. It demands constant innovation and a willingness to change and adapt.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about starting a business from scratch, but what if someone doesn't want to build something brand new? Is there another path to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, there is. It often gets overlooked, but it's called acquisition entrepreneurship, which is basically the process of buying an existing business.
Well, that's interesting. It might not be as flashy as launching a brand new startup, but it could be a faster way to become an owner and a leader.
It can be, but it requires a different set of skills. There's an article, Buying Your Way into Entrepreneurship, and it outlines the process. And it all starts with diligently searching for the right business. It takes time to find a business that aligns with your interests, your skills, and goals.
So patience is key. Don't just jump at the first opportunity that comes along.
Right. And once you've found a promising business, the next step is negotiation. And it's not just about hammering out a price. You have to convince the seller that you're the right person to take over their company, to continue its legacy, and to guide it into the future.
So those persuasion skills we were talking about earlier come in handy here.
Absolutely. And finally, there's the transition phase, which involves communicating with employees and customers and other stakeholders to make sure the handover is smooth and to maintain stability during that change of ownership.
Sounds like a very different set of challenges. Compared to building a team and company culture from the ground up, you're stepping into an existing ecosystem with its own history and relationships and dynamics.
You are. And it's important to be mindful of those dynamics as you transition into that leadership role.
Acquisition entrepreneurship. It's fascinating. It's a reminder that you don't have to come up with the next big idea to be an entrepreneur. Buying an existing business can be a really rewarding path to ownership.
It can be, and it offers a different set of challenges and opportunities compared to starting from scratch. It's definitely something to consider for anyone who is drawn to entrepreneurship, but maybe prefers that more established foundation.
Okay, so far we've had a really insightful discussion. We've covered so much. From the realities of venture capital, to the power of bootstrapping, the principles of lean startup and blitzscaling, the unique challenges of online marketplaces, and even acquisition entrepreneurship.
It's been a whirlwind tour. But I think what's so valuable about all these sources is that they give us this holistic view of entrepreneurship. It's not just about having this brilliant idea or getting a bunch of funding. It's about understanding the complexity of markets and organizations, and even human psychology.
It's about making smart decisions at every step, adapting to those unexpected challenges, and finding a path that aligns with your own definition of success. And that definition is going to be different for everyone.
Exactly. There is no one-size-fits-all approach.
And that brings us to another important topic, the founder's dilemma. This article, also from HBR's 10 must-reads on entrepreneurship. It explores the difficult choices entrepreneurs face as their businesses grow, specifically that tension between maintaining control and maximizing wealth.
Yeah, it's something a lot of entrepreneurs grapple with. They pour everything into their companies. But as those companies grow, they have to make some tough decisions about bringing in outside investors or giving up some control to more experienced managers.
What insights does the article offer?
Well, the article frames it as this rich or king dilemma. Do you prioritize keeping control of your company, even if it means limiting its growth or financial upside? Or are you willing to give up some control to get the resources and expertise? That can help your business really take off.
That's such a tough choice, and there's no easy answer.
There really isn't. The right choice depends on the individual entrepreneur's goals and values and risk tolerance. Some founders are really driven by the desire to build something great, to see their vision come to life, and they're willing to sacrifice some financial gain to stay in control, while others are more focused on maximizing wealth. And they're comfortable giving up some control to achieve that.
So it's about understanding what matters most to you.
And making choices that align with your vision and values.
It would be interesting to see how this dilemma plays out in real life.
Well, the article has some great case studies. One example is the story of Occam Technologies. It's a software company founded by Jim Triandaflu. He was really passionate about his company and determined to maintain control. He initially resisted taking venture capital, even though it meant the company would grow more slowly.
So he chose to be king instead of potentially becoming rich. What happened?
Oh, for him, it was the right choice. He built a successful company while keeping a large ownership stake and control over its direction.
But that's not always the case, right? Sometimes holding on too tightly can actually hurt a company's growth, or even cause it to fail.
That's true. The article also talks about Wiley Technology, a software company that really struggled to grow because its founder, Lou Cern, didn't want to delegate authority or bring in experienced managers. He wanted to control everything. And that ended up holding the company back from growing and competing.
It's a reminder that letting go, at least partially, can be necessary for a company to thrive.
Yeah, it can be a tough lesson, especially for founders who are used to calling all the shots. But it's a reality they need to face.
And this rich or king dilemma isn't just for founders who are building companies from scratch. It can also apply to those who acquire existing businesses.
That's a great point. Even when you're buying an established business, you still have to decide how much control you want to have, how much you're willing to delegate, and how that's going to affect the company's growth.
So it's this fundamental challenge that entrepreneurs face at every stage.
I think that's a great insight.
Okay, so we've talked about business models and strategies, but there's another crucial aspect that can make or break an entrepreneur: emotional intelligence. What role does emotional intelligence play in all of this?
It's so important, and it's often overlooked. It's easy to get caught up in the nuts and bolts of running a business and forget about the human side of things.
Totally. And there's an article in HBR's 10 must-reads on entrepreneurship called Hiring an Entrepreneurial Leader. It goes into the specific traits that set successful entrepreneurs apart. And it's not just about having a great idea or being good with finances. It's about having the emotional intelligence to handle all the ups and downs of building a business.
Right. The article goes beyond those stereotypes. That entrepreneurs are just risk takers and visionaries, and looks at those subtle psychological qualities that make them successful.
Can you talk about those traits? What sets these entrepreneurs apart in terms of their emotional intelligence?
Well, for one thing, the article argues that entrepreneurs aren't necessarily more creative than other leaders, but they are more curious and restless. They have this drive to explore and experiment and challenge the way things are.
So it's not about having all the answers right away. It's about that drive to learn and to adapt to a changing environment.
Exactly. And the article also points out that entrepreneurs aren't necessarily more comfortable with risk than other leaders. What really motivates them is uncertainty and novelty. They're not afraid to push their boundaries and embrace the unknown.
It's not about being reckless. It's about having the resilience to deal with ambiguity.
Exactly. And the article also talks about persuasiveness as a key trait. Entrepreneurs need to be able to communicate their vision really effectively, to inspire others to get on board, and to rally support.
So it's about building relationships, fostering trust, motivating people. It's not just about the product. It's about the story you tell, the connections you make. And all of those qualities fall under emotional intelligence, don't they?
Yes, they do. It's about having self-awareness, empathy, being able to manage your emotions, and build strong relationships, all crucial skills.
So we've looked at all these practical strategies and business models, but it's clear that emotional intelligence is essential for every entrepreneur.
I completely agree. It's the foundation for building a successful venture. And it reminds us that entrepreneurship is about people. It's about relationships. And it's about navigating the very human experience of creating something new.
It's really interesting how all these different pieces of entrepreneurship come together. We've covered a lot. But like you said, emotional intelligence seems to be that key ingredient in all these successful businesses. It's a reminder that it's not just about the numbers. It's about people and relationships and the human side of creating something new.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of the human element, I want to shift our focus to something that's crucial in entrepreneurship, but often gets overlooked: the team.
Oh, the team. That makes sense. You could have the best idea in the world, but without a good team to execute it, it's probably going nowhere.
That's exactly right. And there's this article in HBR's 10 must-reads on entrepreneurship called The Founder's Dilemmas. And it talks about the challenges founders face when building and managing their teams, especially as the company grows.
I'm curious to hear more about that. What are some of those dilemmas that founders run into when it comes to their teams?
One of the biggest is knowing when and how to delegate. In the early stages, founders are doing everything. They're involved in every single part of the business. But as a company gets bigger, they need to start letting go and trusting other people to take on more responsibility.
That's got to be tough for some founders. It's their baby. They put their heart and soul into it. Letting go of control must feel like a huge risk.
Oh, it absolutely is. It requires a big shift in mindset. You have to go from being the one who does everything to being the leader, the strategist, the person who empowers others to succeed. And it also means finding the right people to delegate to, people who share your vision and have the skills to help the company grow.
Yeah, finding the right people is so important. So how can founders build a team that's not only talented, but also fits with the company culture and goals?
Well, the article talks about hiring for cultural fit. Just as much as technical skills, it's about finding people who not only have the expertise, but also believe in what the company stands for and are passionate about the mission.
That makes a lot of sense. A team that's united and believes in what they're doing is going to be way more effective than a group of individuals who are just there to collect a paycheck. Are there any other insights from the article about building and managing teams?
Yeah, it also mentions the importance of clear roles and responsibilities. As the team grows, it's crucial to define who's doing what, so everyone knows how they contribute to the company's success. That clarity helps to prevent confusion and wasted effort and potential conflicts.
So building a successful team is about finding the right people, giving them power, and providing them with the structure and support they need.
It really is. And it's an ongoing process. As the company changes and grows, the team has to adapt too. It's all about finding that balance between a strong core team and bringing in new people with fresh perspectives.
It's amazing how many different factors go into building a successful business. Funding business models, strategy, emotional intelligence, team building. It's a lot.
It definitely is. And it's a journey that demands constant learning, adapting, and evolving. But it's also incredibly rewarding, with tons of challenges and opportunities for growth.
Speaking of growth, I want to go back to online marketplaces for a second. We talked about some of the challenges they face, like building trust and managing risks. But there's another hurdle that's particularly relevant to their growth: scaling.
You're right. Scaling is super important for any online marketplace that wants to be successful. It's not just about getting more users. It's about building a platform that can handle that growth really well.
So what are some of the things online marketplaces need to think about when it comes to scaling?
Well, one big challenge is keeping that good user experience as the platform grows. When you only have a few users, it's pretty easy to manage things and make sure everything's running smoothly. But as you get more users, it's harder to maintain that personal touch.
So it's like growth is essential, but it can also create complications that undermine what made the platform successful in the first place.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's why it's so important for online marketplaces to have a good plan for scaling, a plan that addresses both the technical side and the human side of things.
Can you give us some examples of how online marketplaces can scale without sacrificing that positive user experience?
Sure, one way is to use technology to automate certain processes, like signing up new users, processing payments, and resolving disputes. This frees up people to focus on the more complicated things that need a human touch.
So it's about using technology to make things more efficient without losing that personal touch.
Exactly. Another important thing is to build a strong community. You could do this by having things like forums, groups, and events, where users can connect with each other, share their experiences, and support one another.
Yeah, building a sense of community not only makes for a better user experience, but it also creates a network of people who will tell others about the platform. It's a win-win.
Right. And it can really drive growth. When users feel like they're part of something bigger, they're more likely to stick around and recommend it to others.
We've talked a lot about the challenges of being an entrepreneur. But what about the rewards? What makes it all worthwhile?
For a lot of entrepreneurs, it's that sense of autonomy and control. They're their own boss, they set their own hours, and they have the freedom to pursue what they're passionate about.
Yeah, that's a huge draw for people. Being your own captain, charting your own course.
Exactly. And it's also that challenge of creating something from nothing, of seeing your vision become reality, and the satisfaction of making a positive impact on the world.
It's the thrill of the unknown, the excitement of pushing boundaries and making something new.
Right. And let's not forget about the financial rewards. While money isn't always the main motivator for entrepreneurs, it's definitely a factor. The chance to build wealth and create financial security for yourself and your family is a big incentive.
That's the dream for a lot of people. Financial freedom and being able to live life on your own terms.
Yeah. But it's important to remember that entrepreneurship is not a quick way to get rich. It takes a lot of hard work and dedication. And you have to be willing to keep going when things get tough.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Absolutely. But if you're willing to put in the work, the rewards can be incredible.
We've looked at so many different parts of entrepreneurship today, and one thing that keeps popping up is how important it is to be adaptable.
You're right. In today's world, things are changing so fast. Being adaptable isn't just a good skill to have, it's necessary to survive.
So how can entrepreneurs become more adaptable?
Well, one way is to have a growth mindset, which is the belief that you can always learn and grow.
So instead of seeing challenges as failures, you see them as chances to learn.
Exactly. And another important part of being adaptable is being open to trying new things and taking risks. Don't be afraid to experiment, to step out of your comfort zone, and to learn from your mistakes.
It's about being okay with not knowing everything.
Yeah, and it's also about building a team that's adaptable and can bounce back from setbacks.
It sounds like being adaptable is super important for anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur.
It is. And it's a quality that will help you not just in business, but in life too.
As we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm struck by how many different paths there are in entrepreneurship. There's no one right way to do it.
That's so true. What's great about this field is that it encourages people to be themselves and create their own path.
It's about finding what works for you, using your strengths, and building a business that matches your values and vision.
Exactly. And it's about having the courage to take that first step, to embrace the unknown and go on a journey that's both challenging and rewarding.
Wow, we have covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into entrepreneurship. From those myths about venture capital to the power of bootstrapping, the lean startup methodology, the intensity of blitzscaling, the unique world of online marketplaces, the path of acquisition entrepreneurship, and the crucial roles of emotional intelligence and team building. It's been quite a journey.
It really has. And one thing that stands out to me is that throughout all these concepts and approaches, there's this recurring theme of embracing uncertainty and change.
Yeah, that's so true. Adaptability seems like the most important skill for an entrepreneur, whether you're dealing with the ups and downs of a startup, or scaling a fast-growing business, or responding to changes in the market. Being able to adapt is crucial.
Absolutely. And that adaptability goes beyond just reacting to external changes.
Yeah.
It's also about having the self-awareness to recognize when your own assumptions or approaches need to change.
That makes me think about our conversation about the founder's dilemma, that rich or king choice. Sometimes letting go of control, even just a little bit, is the best thing for the company.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that what worked in the beginning might not be the best approach as the company grows. Being willing to let go of some things, whether it's delegating tasks or bringing in outside experts, or even thinking about an exit strategy, that can actually be a sign of strength.
Yeah, it's about making choices that are good for the company in the long run, even if they require personal sacrifice or a change in perspective.
And those choices often need a lot of emotional intelligence, which we've talked about a lot today. Being able to manage your emotions, understand other people's perspectives, and build strong relationships, those are all important skills for entrepreneurs.
It seems like emotional intelligence is the thread that ties all these different aspects of entrepreneurship together.
I think you're right. Whether you're pitching your idea to investors, or motivating your team, or negotiating a deal, being able to connect with people on an emotional level is so valuable.
It's about building trust, inspiring confidence, creating a sense of shared purpose.
Exactly. And those are qualities that you can't just learn from a book or a class. They come from within, from really understanding yourself and wanting to connect with others.
As we finish up this deep dive, I'm feeling both excited and realistic about entrepreneurship. It's a path full of challenges and risks, but also incredible opportunities for growth and satisfaction.
I agree. I think the most important thing for anyone thinking about becoming an entrepreneur is to be aware of the challenges, but don't let them stop you from chasing your dream.
Be adaptable, be resilient, and be open to learning and growing.
And remember, entrepreneurship is all about people. It's about relationships and creating something that makes the world a better place.
So if you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, ask yourself, what makes you unique? How can you use your strengths to navigate this crazy world and make a real difference?
What's your story going to be? We hope this deep dive has given you the knowledge and inspiration to write that story, one chapter at a time.
That's it for this deep dive into the world of entrepreneurship. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.